you're not an expert when it comes to the Trinity in the Old Testament. I don't know if you could do any better in the New Testament, let alone the Fathers. I'm just letting you know. Stay in your lane. Leave it to others. Leave it to William, and I pray I'm one of them as well. Look at his argument. Look.
Well, some people have seen here an allusion to the Holy Trinity. And if you want to say that within the spiritual sense of the text, there's an allusion to the Holy Trinity here, I think that's totally fine. But the Holy Trinity had not been clearly revealed in the Old Testament period. And so that makes it unlikely that that's what is the literal sense of the text, which is the one that the human author of Genesis would have been aware of. Okay.
Did you hear that? It's fine if you think it's a Trinity, but the literal sense of the text, which the author would have been aware of, right, is not the Trinity. Even though we've gone out of our way to prove from the writings of Moses that he affirms God, he affirms the angel of Yahweh as God, distinct from God, and the Holy Spirit. And in Genesis 1 verse 2, he mentions Ruach Elohim, the Spirit of God. And the verb he uses is Yuzelstor of Yahweh. And it's a verb that points to consciousness, cognizance, awareness. Right? But then it gets worse. He's now parroting Michael Heiser. And I had to write blogs contrasting Heiser's view with the early church. So why appeal to the early church when unanimously the early Christians unanimously taught that this is the Father speaking to the Son and the Spirit, unanimously. Now, they didn't always mention the Spirit, not because they denied the Spirit was there, because they were focusing on the Son. But when they do speak of the Spirit, they involve him in Genesis 1:26. Can I watch?
Okay, so what we need to do to figure out who God is referring to here is say, well, who would the Hebrew author of Genesis have understood him to be talking to? Who are who's available in the Hebrew worldview for God to be talking to and saying this stuff to about let us make man in our image and so forth? And the answer is pretty clear, because even though
pretty clear, right? Clearly clear to who? It's pathetic, the current state of scholarship and apologetics.
So the Trinity had not been revealed in Old Testament times, certainly not in a clear way. The idea that God was all alone in heaven was not part of the Hebrew worldview. God was depicted as a heavenly king ruling over creation, and any king has his court. And so Hebrews understood that, yeah, God is the creator. He's at the top of everything, but he's like any king, he's going to have a heavenly court around him. And in scholarly literature, this court is called the Divine Council. And today we would refer to the members of the Divine Council as angels. That term was a little more restricted. I mean, technically an angel is a...
He's parroting word for word Michael Heiser. I know, because I've read Heiser and I wrote a series of refutations to this assertion. Michael Heiser said that the Old Testament mimics the divine council of the pagans, like the Canaanites, and they had what they call a three-tier council. God, the gods, called the sons of God, and angels, their messengers. That's a lie. It's not in the scriptures. Michael Heiser was reading that into the Old Testament from outside sources. He's parroting Michael Heiser without doing any critical thinking on his own part. Shame on you, Jimmy. Really disappointed in you. Because the Bible shows that the sons of God, who are supposedly the gods, the second tier, are the very angels of God. Doesn't distinguish between the two. I have the documentation. No, but he's already got an answer for that. And this is typical Michael Heiser. The cohortative mood. Parroting Heiser. You would think this is Heiser with a red beard. Pathetic. Very disappointed. And here, I'm disappointed.
Messenger, so angels or messengers are part of the divine court, but they're like the low-ranking guys. They just run messages here and there.
Prove it, Jimmy. Please invite me to dialogue. I'm going to challenge you to show me the scriptures when the angels are the lower tier, whereas the scriptures that you point to talk about God, sons of God, in the Greek versions, they are the ones called the angels of God. So I'm going to call you out for it. Prove me wrong.
There are much higher officials in the divine court that they're not just the little nobodies at the bottom, and they wouldn't have been called angels in the Old Testament, but they are today because
no, that's a lie. And I'm not saying he's lying. He's just ignorant. Let me just be upfront. He's not lying. He's ignorant. So I'm calling him out because he's parroting Michael Heiser. That's a lie. I'm not saying Heiser was lying. He was simply reading too much of the Canaanite literature, the Canaanite pantheon, back into the Old Testament. That's a lie. It's not true, brethren. Don't believe it. And I'm going to document it in a minute. LaPonte, everyone else, I'm going to document it in a minute. Just give me a second.
because language changes over time. So the natural understanding of, well, who would the Hebrew author of Genesis have envisioned God talking to? It would have been the divine council. And so that's who God's talking to here. Now that raises. Now
watch how he tries to object or respond to an objection, and he uses the same argument of Michael Heiser, which Muslims use, and I'll prove it to you in a second. Hold on a second, because I gotta get the Ignatian Study Bible ready. Man, this is the point, and this is God's timing, folks. I promise you. I just started watching this within 10 minutes before I was going live. This is God's timing. Obviously, I take this that God wanted me to see it to refute it. May the Lord confirm it. Jimmy, stay in your lane, buddy. You suck when it comes to the Trinity in the Old Testament, New Testament. You suck. And I'm getting upset. I'm getting angry. You're doing more damage than good.
This is a related question of, did members of the divine council actually do anything, or did God do it all himself? And you might suppose, well, if he says, let's do this, you might suppose that more than just God is going to be involved in the creation of man. But that is not a requirement of the language, because I could say, let's say Cy Kellett and I are getting together after the show, and I'm planning on buying dinner for us, and I say, Cy, let's get pizza. All I'm asking for Cy to do here is consent. I'm going to pay for the pizza. I'm going to order the pizza. I'm just associating Cy with my plan to get pizza.
You want me to show you that why he's a parrot? Here you go. Parrot. Who is the us in Genesis 1:26, according to Michael Heiser? Watch here. He used even the analogy given by Heiser. You see it? Okay, let's go here. It's like me going in a room of friends saying, hey, let's go get some pizza. Isn't this guy pathetic for parroting Michael Heiser?